Thousands of ducks are released straight into rice paddies in the middle of the growing season. No fences, no supervision, just ducks, rice, and what looks like total chaos. At first glance, it feels like a disaster waiting to happen. Rice fields are fragile. The ecosystem is sensitive. One wrong move could wipe out an entire harvest. Yet this is the method China chose to rescue more than 40% of its farmland, severely degraded by the pressure of 4 million tons of pesticides used every year. And something no one expected happened. After just one growing season, the rice fields didn't collapse, they began to recover. So what was really happening beneath the water surface? And why is a method that seems ancient now challenging modern industrial agriculture? Mandarin Tech reveals the story in this video. In less than a century, farmland across the world has become almost completely mechanized. Transplanters, harvesters, and sprayers replace manual labor. Synthetic fertilizers made crops grow faster. Pesticides allowed pests and diseases to be controlled at a scale never seen before. As a result, global food production increased many times over. But the cost has become increasingly clear. Each year, agriculture is responsible for about 20 to 25% of total global greenhouse gas emissions, most of it coming from chemical fertilizers and degraded farmland. Pesticides alone have severely reduced soil microorganisms, disrupting the biological cycles that naturally maintain soil fertility. According to many studies, more than 40% of the world's agricultural land is gradually losing its ability to regenerate, forcing farmers to apply higher and higher amounts of fertilizer and chemicals just to maintain the same yields. The problem becomes even more serious when more than half of the world's population depends on rice. Rice fields are not just a farming system, they are a foundation of global food security. When this ecosystem weakens, the risk no longer stays within individual fields, but spreads across the entire system that feeds billions of people. A dangerous cycle begins to form, quietly weakening agricultural ecosystems season after season. If modern agriculture is creating its own problems, then where does the real way out lie? Ironically, the answer to the modern agricultural crisis lies in practices that existed long before chemicals ever appeared. For centuries, in rice-growing regions across East Asia, rice fields were never treated as a single-purpose production surface. They were living ecosystems where rice and ducks coexisted. Ducks were released into the paddies shortly after transplanting, moving all day through the shallow water, eating insects, young weeds, and gently stirring the top layer of mud. Their droppings became a direct source of nutrients for the soil, replacing much of the need for external fertilizers. No machinery, no pesticides, yet the system maintained stable yields over long periods of time. Agricultural records show that the rice-duck model has been practiced for more than 600 years, long enough to prove that its effectiveness comes not from sheer output, but from biological balance. Within this system, pest outbreaks were rare. The soil was not exhausted, and rice fields were able to sustain themselves season after season. When the first ducks are released into the rice fields, the natural reaction for many people is concern. The rice plants are still young and fragile, and just one strong impact could ruin an entire harvest. But very quickly, a different pattern begins to emerge. Ducks largely avoid the rice plants. Instead, they focus on whatever moves in the water and grows faster than rice. Exactly the things farmers constantly struggle to control. Brown plant hoppers, stem borers, leaf hoppers, and various aquatic insects become their main food source. As the flock moves continuously through the field, the ducks disrupt the pest life cycle at an early stage, causing pest populations to drop noticeably within just a few weeks. At the same time, their movement stirs the water surface, destroying mosquito larvae and other harmful organisms
organisms, significantly reducing the need for pesticide spraying. Weeds also lose their chance to grow as they once did. Ducks feed on young weed shoots, duckweed, barnyard grass, and even wild rice, plants that normally compete directly with rice for nutrients. Every step the ducks take interrupts weed root formation, preventing weeds from developing into dense mats. This constant disturbance creates an unexpected effect. Oxygen is introduced into the water and the top layer of soil, reducing anaerobic conditions, limiting soil compaction, and allowing rice roots to grow deeper and stronger. Many researchers compare this to a form of natural tilling that happens throughout the day, and throughout this entire process, duck droppings are spread evenly across the field, like a continuous stream of organic fertilizer. Rich in nitrogen and organic matter, this nutrient source feeds both the soil and the rice plants more steadily, avoiding the over-application common with chemical fertilizers, while also reducing the risk of surface and groundwater pollution. To turn what seems like chaotic movement into an advantage, farmers must control every step of releasing the ducks with precision. The ducks are introduced only 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting, when the rice plants are strong enough to withstand movement in the water without bending or breaking. If released too early, young seedlings can be damaged. If released too late, the effectiveness of pest control drops significantly. Duck density is also not something to be left to chance. Studies in China and Japan show that the optimal range is typically 150 to 300 ducks per hectare, depending on soil conditions, water depth, and rice variety. Too few ducks produce a biological impact that is too weak to replace chemical inputs. Too many, on the other hand, can cloud the water, stress the root system, and reduce the plant's ability to photosynthesize. Equally important is the timing of removing the ducks from the field. When rice enters the panicle initiation stage and begins preparing to flower, the ducks must be completely withdrawn. This is the most sensitive phase of the rice plant, where even a small disturbance can directly affect the number of grains formed on each panicle. In rice duck farming systems monitored in China and Japan, spending on chemical pesticides typically drops by 50 to 70%, while chemical fertilizer costs fall by 20 to 40%. This means total input costs per hectare of rice fields are significantly reduced, often starting in the very first growing season. For many small farming households, this is a matter of survival at a time when agricultural input prices continue to rise. But the benefits do not stop at simply spending less. The value of the rice itself also changes. Rice produced in rice duck systems is often classified as ecological rice or low-chemical rice, and in many Asian markets, it can sell for 10 to 30% higher prices than conventionally grown rice. Consumers are willing to pay extra for safety and sustainability they can recognize and trust. Alongside the rice, the duck flock becomes a real economic product of its own. With access to natural food sources in the fields, ducks grow quickly with low reliance on commercial feed and minimal dependence on antibiotics. At the end of the season, farmers can sell duck meat or eggs, creating an additional income stream independent of rice prices and helping to spread market risk. In many systems, revenue from ducks is enough to offset a large share of rice production costs, turning an ecological system into an economic model capable of balancing itself. As chemicals are withdrawn, rice fields begin to change in ways people have long forgotten. The water gradually becomes clearer, algae levels drop, and the smell of anaerobic decay disappears. Creatures that were once pushed out of the farming system start to return. Beneficial insects appear first, followed by frogs, small fish, dragonflies, and water birds. The rice field no longer operates like a starch factory, but slowly reclaims its role as a living ecosystem. More importantly, studies have recorded a 20 to 30% reduction in methane emissions compared to conventionally farmed chemical-intensive rice fields.